One of the biggest issues facing America is the deep state's rampant abuse of power in the lead up to the 2016 election. Yesterday, the former CEO of Overstock.com made some incredibly startling allegations about Jim Comey. I saw it. Even claiming that Comey encouraged him to have a romantic relationship with an alleged Russian spy in the lead up to the 2016 election. Take a look at what he told our own Martha McCallum yesterday.
A few weeks before the Republican convention,
right,
but about the time that Trump became the
nominee,
presumptive nominee,
yeah,
not nominee, but they came back and said, boy, did we make a mistake. Russia. We need to do it. And I want to be clear, they said this. They said the United States never, ever asked this of somebody. Never asked a citizen to conduct a romantic relationship in order to get information. This is such a national security emergency. We need to ask you to do this. You want to see a former director crap his pants? Pardon me. Go stick a television camera on Peter Strzok, or let's just say James Comey, and say the name Patrick Byrne. You will see a former director of the FBI crap his pants.
Fired FBI Director Jim Comey is calling those claims ridiculous. And while we can't currently prove these allegations against Comey and others, we do know that Jim Comey was reportedly reprimanded for lacking candor by the Inspector General. Meanwhile, his former right-hand man, Andy McCabe, was actually fired by the FBI, get this, for lying. But get this, the so-called Facts First network, it's funny, CNN just hired McCabe. Clearly, honesty is not something valued by fake news CNN. Joining us now with reaction is Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz and former U.S. Attorney Brett Tolman. Thanks, guys, for joining us. Congressman, I'll go to you first. While we're on the McCabe thing at the end, I mean, listen, what better way to reestablish credibility at a network that's promoting this debunked, disgraced collusion hoax for 2 years than to hire one of the key figures in it who was actually under investigation for lying? It's almost like a bad joke being played on America right now.
Well, and if it's facts first for CNN's motto, it may very well be indictments second, because you've got Andrew McCabe, who's probably the target of Mr. Downer's criminal investigation. And this is a troubling trend for CNN. They also hired Andrew Gillum, and recent reporting suggests that Andrew Gillum is also a potential target of the FBI. So I hope that in all these contributor contracts, CNN got the rights to the Lockup episodes, because I cannot wait for the Lockup CNN Contributor Special that is likely to come with their recent hires.
Maybe their ratings will be a little bit. Maybe they'll get more than 10 people in an airport out west watching them. This is a quote from Andrew McCabe, Comey's deputy, which I find tragically comical right now. When asked about Patrick Byrne, who levied some serious charges, and I agree with you, by the way, Brett, I found him to be very credible too, and also based on some sourcing I had. McCabe said, McComey, talk about a Freudian slip. McCabe said, that is not simply the sort of thing that the FBI does. Well, let's go down the list of the sort of thing the FBI did under Comey. And again, I'm talking about the management, not the rank and file agents. Comey, they stamped verified on unverified information. They claim they knew about Russian sources when they interviewed Russian sources, from what I'm told from my sources, in January, and found out they were entirely not credible. They were desperate to authenticate this dossier using sources targeting a political campaign. I mean, the things they did were clearly unprecedented, so that's not much of an excuse anymore that they don't operate that way.
We also know that Robert Mueller wasn't going to defend this activity. When we pressed Robert Mueller about the strategy that the U.S. government, the FBI, seemed to use to try to take people like Joseph Mifsud, who my colleague Jim Jordan asked about, or Azra Turk, and run these people into the Trump orbit with the hopes that it would germinate in some scandal, that is precisely what the FBI was doing at this point in time. And when we asked those questions to try to get to the origins of this corrupt investigation, you even saw Mueller unwilling to stand by that work. That's why what Attorney General Bill Barr is doing right now is so important, because he will uncover the extent to which there was a corrupt motive that underpinned all of these various efforts. I don't know if Patrick Byrne was telling the truth or not. I do know it seems pretty odd to me that he had this relationship with Maria Butina where they only met up once every 6 weeks. I don't know about most relationships, but every person I've ever dated, if you don't text back in 6 hours, you better have an alibi. And if you go 6 days, you better have hospital records that you were somewhere. but apparently he had an arrangement where he only had to show up and see Miss Butina every 6 weeks. Pretty interesting.
We've seen this now repeatedly. The evidence is now overwhelming. We see these people intersecting with the Trump orbit, whether it's Joseph Mifsud, who you brought up before, whether it's Stephen Halper, Alexander Downer, people either connected to the diplomatic or the intelligence interface here in our country or with foreign intelligence. And it seems like each time they come up with a big donut, nothing. And now we see another source surfacing with the same story being asked, as he alleges, by our law enforcement to approach people on this collusion thing. I mean, when are we going to get to the bottom of this and start to state the obvious that this looks like it was apparently some kind of a setup?
It was clearly a setup, and that's what I think the Downer investigation will prove, and I think it'll result in criminal prosecutions, and I think that Andrew McCabe will be one of the people that ultimately faces charges as a consequence. But you see time and again, you had the folks leading the deep state so unwilling to accept the will of the voters to have Donald Trump be our president that they were out trying to seed scandals. They were out trying to stir up and set up any possible circumstance where they could link someone with the Trump campaign, even tangentially, to something related to Russia. And time and again that failed. Now you see, I think, the American people demanding to know why we ended up in this circumstance in the first place, and that's why we're going to support the Attorney General's good work to put the people who started this corrupt investigation behind bars.
You're obviously on the inside up there on the Hill. I know you've been vocal about this. You've been on this network and elsewhere speaking about it. A lot of people are starting to, and just piggybacking on what Brett just said, it seems like everybody in the Trump orbit who sneezed went to jail. I mean, Mike Flynn was arrested for allegedly making false statements when the FBI said there were no signs of deception. They were their words, not mine, in their own 302. What is going on here? And do you feel that they're really seriously going to get to the bottom of this and hold them to the same standards they held the Trump team to?
I have high confidence that Attorney General Barr will succeed where Attorney General Jeff Sessions failed. The reason that we have such delayed justice is twofold. One, Jeff Sessions wasn't really in charge of the Justice Department, so you sort of had the inmates running the asylum over there. And then second, Paul Ryan, as Speaker of the House, wouldn't support our efforts when we were in the majority to get subpoenas and force the people like Clapper and Brennan and other folks from the Obama White House to answer tough questions about their involvement in these circumstances. So those forces together have delayed justice, but I think now we will get the justice we need because we have a serious Attorney General. And look, I mean, only one of two things is possible. Either Patrick Byrne is telling the truth or he's lying. If he's telling the truth, it's more evidence of criminal scandal. And if he's lying, maybe he's got a future as a CNN contributor.